Following Cameron the T-Rex, we had a double release of more tyrannosaurids. We've covered the Daspletosaurus, so here's the other half of that release, Lythronax. Our Lythronax has always been an interesting one. First described by Lowen, together with Teratophonius, he has rather substantial skull remains. Unfortunately, the postcranial is very fragmentary as you see here, so much of it is filled in with other tyrannosaurs. However, the all-important skull has enough preserved to show something interesting. Lythronax comes from the Greek ethron, meaning gore, and anax, meaning lord or king. So the name means gore king, which is a really dramatic one. And here we have Keynes the Lythronax, and like the PNSO Daspletosaurus, he's about 26 centimeters or 10.2 inches from the snout to tail tip. And the postcranial remains are miserably known and has been estimated to be up to 8 meters or 26.3 feet long, which puts this model at 1 to 30 of scale, and unfortunately not 1 to 35. The tallest point is the crown at 9.7 centimeters or 3.8 inches. And here we have the 1 to 30 of humanoid. You can see that we're really going into the small side of the tyrannosaurs here. Now, as to the color, the release image certainly looked pretty bland, except for some spots that remind me of the dog-like Calectae Megalosaurus or their Protoceratops. However, in hand, now this is one of those happy cases where the actual model looks better than the release images. Yes, it's still earth tones, but other than that, you'll see there's an almost reddish orange in the face, which continues down the neck, and then transitions into a yellow in the body. And not just that, you also get shades of green that are most obvious depending on the lighting. And dorsally, you see here that very dark olive that segues so nicely into the top of the skull, the neck, and the body. I'm really happy with this. The balances of color here and here, and here are wonderfully thought out. Now the skull is thankfully mostly preserved with missing elements, including both premaxillae, nasals, and jugals, but enough remains to reconstruct it thusly. And here you see one of the special features of Lythronax. The posterior part is very substantially expanded mediolaterally, so that the eyes are directed quite forwards. Now, these are characteristics found only in Tyrannosaurus, and to a lesser extent Tarbosaurus. You can see here when you compare the dimensions against Tyrannosaurus and Albertosaurus. And together with other features, Lythronax is established in a very intimate position with Tyrannosaurus and Tarbosaurus, and also Zhuchengtyrannus. And it's considered the oldest tyrannosaurid so far, though not basal. The mouth articulates, and you see the detail within. The tongue, the palate with the choanal openings, and of course those teeth which you might want to touch up. And of interest is the maxillary teeth, which are heterodont, with the first 5 being significantly larger than the posterior 6. Now I'm delighted to see that's indeed the case here. Now of the body, nothing much is known, so it's pretty much based on a generic tyrannosaurid morphology. We do have the pubis, notable for its expanded pubic boot just like in Tyrannosaurus, we see hints of that here. Other than that, nothing really specific to comment about. So I'll give you a once-over where you can admire not just the scale detail, but this time also the coloration. Now this is a delightful departure, as you see again in these blends of color. The yellows, the greens, the reds, all being part of a whole picture. Really happy with this color. Now, a word on the pose. As you can see, it's rather unusual, looking up either inquisitively, perhaps sniffing the air, perhaps considering if some pterosaurs will be worth the effort. What I like best about it is that it mimics the pose seen in the Lowen paper. And I always like these kinds of models that reflect the reconstruction in an article I like. Now this is quite stable, and a smaller size means it could be more resistant to warping, but long term, I wouldn't take the risk. Now for comparisons, let's first look at the PNSO Daspletosaurus. Now some of you have told me you'd buy only one, and hopefully this will help you decide. Now for me, given a choice, I'd go for the Lythronax if you can overlook the scale not being 1:35. The color, the pose, the proportions are far more pleasing to me, which is a pity, because I really like the head on the Daspletosaurus. It's just the proportions of the body and the hind limbs that I'm iffy about. In the Lythronax, given its significant similarities to a T-Rex, I think a body very similar but scaled down makes sense. Now let's have a quick look at the 3 other tyrannosaurids it's close to. First, the Wilson T-Rex, since it's the one most of you will have. Here we have the newer Cameron. The Tarbosaurus, and the Zhuchengtyrannus. Now having these 4 together really makes me wish the Lythronax was smaller. Would make a really nice family picture. So that's pretty much it for the PNSO Lythronax, and together with the Daspletosaurus, it's 3 tyrannosaurids in succession. If there's any more, I hope it will be something more distinctive like Teratophonius or an Albertosaurine, maybe Gorgosaurus or Albertosaurus itself. But I do hope for a more diverse spread in future releases after this. For many years there was a high demand for more Tyrannosaur diversity, and I'm certainly glad we have it now. But at this rate, what of the other Tyrannosaurs offered by other companies, and yet more to come, I think we're quickly approaching that state where aggregate supply will outpace aggregate demand. And with coloration like the Lythronax, however, I'm hoping the old dark stripes on brown won't be as sticky as wages and prices. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.